I know what girlfriends do. They make you feel the happiest you ever felt. Then they crawl up inside of you and poop on your heart.
We all become philosophers after a breakup. But Butters aspires to something greater than just posting passive-aggressive quotes on his story and hoping that his ex will view them. He wants to change the world. So, he starts a movement.
I'm tired of girls saying boys need to change. Somebody has to stand up for our rights.
That somebody, of course, is Butters. No, there was no election. He appointed himself. But let's rewind for a bit. How did we even get here? And what the hell are these rights that Butters is talking about? It starts with an incident on the school message board. Somebody is trolling the girls and their mothers. This video is not about the troll, but if you haven't watched season 20, that context is very important. This troll is putting wieners in their mouths and calling them fat skanks over and over. That sort of thing. The girls try to fight back, but the troll doesn't stop. They even protest by sitting down for the national anthem. But that just makes the trolling worse. The boys do their best to find the troll and stop this gender war before it gets too far. But they fail. They even smash Cartman's gadgets because they think he's the troll, but it turns out they're wrong. The trolling continues. And so, tired of being relentlessly bullied online, the girls at South Park Elementary make a pact to break up with all their boyfriends at the same time. And it's brutal. While the rest of the boys are crying their eyes out, Butters feels mostly safe. His girlfriend is Canadian.
It's been a rough few weeks, baby.
Butters, I'm sorry, but I told you not to Skype me anymore, right?
Oops. Butters is not the kind of guy who gives up easily. He does the manliest thing possible in that scenario. He begs.
But Charlotte, I love you. I need you. You can't break up with me.
To Butters' surprise, the begging doesn't work. It turns out all girls are equally stubborn, no matter where they come from.
I have to stand with my girlfriend.
Butters goes ballistic.
Those slinky snakes in the grass.
He blames the girls in his school for corrupting his perfect little Canadian girlfriend. Charlotte tells him women and girls have to stand together. That doesn't register with Butters. He's heartbroken and angry, and by God, he's gonna let it all out.
So then it's true. You're all snakes in the grass. Every last one of you. Oh, Charlotte? Are you there?
She is not. She is hung up on him. At South Park Elementary, relations between boys and girls are as tense as they've ever been. Kyle proposes a solution.
We need to be more active in showing the girls we respect them.
This solution is one big glaring problem, though. Butters doesn't like it. He's angry from his breakup, but there is something else, making him even angrier.
All I've been hearing about the past few weeks is how this is our problem. How boys need to change.
He says he's getting pretty sick of it. Butters didn't do anything. He didn't troll the girls, but he is getting punished anyway, and every day he is told it's his fault. This naturally makes him very angry. These are perfect conditions for a reactionary movement, a perceived injustice coupled with righteous outrage. All kindling in there and all the dry wood is piled up nice and neat. The only thing you need to start a fire is a spark. And we just found our spark. Butters doesn't like carrying the sins of another man. He doesn't like being told that he should be ashamed of being a boy. He doesn't like being dumped, and he doesn't like Kyle's proposed solution of trying to accommodate the girls. He feels that he's being unfairly punished, and he won't take it anymore.
This is a war on all of us. Pretty soon they'll be locking us all up.
The gender war has well and truly begun, and Butters doesn't believe in taking prisoners. He tells Tweak and Craig that even they aren't safe.
Just because you're gay doesn't mean you aren't looked down upon for being boys.
Butters wants the boys to unite against the girls, fight fire with fire. But Kyle thinks Butters is getting a little unhinged. He tells Butters to calm down. Butters disagrees very strongly.
No! We tried doing what the girls wanted us to do, and where did it get us? Nowhere.
Butters has gained his first convert. The momentum only builds up from there. Now, while the anger and sense of righteous victimhood that drives the movement can be justified, some of the other tactics Butters uses are more questionable. The first of these questionable tactics is deflecting blame and dodging responsibility.
What happened to Eric Cartman is the girl's fault, not ours.
Butters is referring to when the boys destroyed Cartman's gadgets thinking he was a troll. They did all that on their own, but now Butters wants to blame the girls for it. The boys may have done all the stabbing and smashing, but it was the girls who made them do it. This is very cynical, but it's the perfect solution. Tolkien, the ringleader of gadget smashing conspiracy, is the strongest supporter of this theory.
What happened to Eric Cartman is the girl's fault, not ours. That's true.
And with that trick, Tolkien and the rest have washed their sins away. They're not victims anymore. They're actually the good guys. This trick has been used by a lot of questionable movements to justify their terrible actions. It goes something like this. It didn't happen. And if it happened, it wasn't our fault. And if it wasn't our fault, it's because they made us do it. So they deserve it. Once these movements have branded themselves as the good guys, every evil thing they do can be justified with a single line. It was for a good cause. That brings us to the second tactic used by protest movements.
The moment is coming when you all need to decide. Are you with your kind, or are you with Uncle Kyle?
Now this is a very old tactic. It goes back as far as humanity itself. Even Jesus used it in the Bible. Those who are not with us are against us. This is polarization. You might know it as the us versus them. The reason it has been in use for so long is because it works. Humans are naturally tribal, and the us versus them approach helps you unify your side around whichever identity you share. In Butter's case, it's the wiener.
I'm a boy, dagnabbit, and you know what? I'm proud of my little wiener!
On top of strengthening the group around a shared identity, you give the group a common enemy to hate. Polarization also gives you free reign to shame anybody and everybody. Butters employs it from the very beginning.
Don't be an Uncle Kyle!
You may have seen a version of this somewhere. Why don't you support us, bro? Are you like a horrible person or something? And how do you prove you are a good person? Well, you subscribe, ladies and gentlemen. The biggest downside of polarization is that it often dehumanizes the enemy. It doesn't sound like a big deal, but once you achieve full dehumanization, everything, no matter how abhorrent, becomes fair game. And Butters is about to show just how abhorrent it can get. Girls have a volleyball game, and Butters plans to protest it. The girls protest being bullied by sitting down for the national anthem, so Butters chooses Reciprocity. He drops his pants and shows off his wiener. First, his followers are shocked.
Holy crap, dude, look at Butters.
Then they copy him. Boys all over the place drop their pants and show off their wieners while the national anthem plays.
Oh no!
This escalation is common with a lot of movements. Once they've decided they are the good guys, they can reframe every little evil thing they do to the perceived bad guys as an actually good thing. There are also opportunists who will use protest movements to either benefit themselves or just stick it to the perceived enemy in a way they can't think. That's why street protests feature a lot of looting and hashtag protests feature a lot of false or grossly exaggerated allegations. Now, you might be wondering, how the hell do they get away with it? I'll let PC Principal answer that for you.
As a community, we have all decided that people have the right to protest the national anthem.
Every law can be interpreted in 100 different ways. That's why everybody hates lawyers. Their entire job is finding loopholes in things that everybody else thinks are obvious. And when it comes to achieving their goals, protesters tend to channel their inner lawyer. The girls of South Park protest the national anthem by sitting down. This is a protected right. But when the South Park universe collectively agreed that protesting the national anthem was okay, they didn't think of the creative protesting methods that people like Butters would come up with. That includes utterly disgusting methods like showing off your junk.
Yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for!
Real-life movements use the same loophole. They can be very loud and obnoxious. Protesters block traffic and glue themselves to the road to stop people from getting to work. They can make the lives of innocent people miserable in 1,000 different ways. But as long as they're peaceful, it's technically legal and you just have to tolerate them. And just like with most protesters, getting away with being an obnoxious little troll just emboldens Butters, so he gets bigger and more obnoxious. Butters takes his protest to the school's hallways. On top of swinging wieners, Butters adds a megaphone. He has most of the boys in school marching in his protest, wieners completely out.
Don't let anyone tell you to not think with your wiener, as if your wiener is a bad thing.
What does Butters hope to accomplish with his escalating obnoxiousness? Think about it. Really. Is this going to get him his girlfriend back? Definitely not. She's even more repulsed by him now than she was before. The same goes for all the boys in Butters' parade. They joined him because they were heartbroken, but showing off their wieners isn't going to fix their broken hearts. If anything, it's just going to make the girls hate them more. But they're obviously not thinking clearly. They're just angry. Blind anger is the same tactic that certain protest groups that shall not be named use. They just yell and pull annoying stunts, conveniently forgetting that you can't annoy people into agreeing with you. That's just common sense. Which begs the question, why are Butters and the gang doing it anyway? Why are they making everybody look at their junk when 2 minutes of thinking them would tell that this is the absolute worst way of getting their message across? The reason is because Butters isn't interested in winning over the girls to his side, or even the boys for that matter. This goes for certain other protesters as well. Butters is interested in one thing and one thing only. Butters doesn't care if other people agree with him as long as they bend the knee. You can't annoy people into agreeing with you, but you can definitely annoy them into giving up and just surrendering. It's what the more obnoxious protesters want. They don't care about convincing you to see the world from their point of view. They just want to beat you over the head with their obnoxiousness until you cave and do whatever they want, regardless of whether you like it or not.
You are either with us or against us. It's really that simple.
It's the adult version of a temper tantrum. They just roll on the ground and scream until mommy, or society in this case, gives you what you want. That is the message, over and over again. You can accept their demands and find peace, or you can keep resisting and enjoy the misery of dealing with them. These tactics work. Stan gives up, drops his pants, and joins the movement. But annoying people alone is not enough to make everybody surrender. One person holds out. Despite the constant shaming and annoyances, Kyle still insists on being the voice of reason. But he can't do it alone. So he seeks help from an unlikely source. Woke Cartman.
There's still a part of men who aren't comfortable with women having power.
Kyle wants them to help him screw around with Butters.
The truth is, Eric and I are just kind of out of it now.
Kyle is alone, so he plays his last card.
There's really only one answer.
He has surrendered. The girls walk out in disgust. The boys raise Stan as a hero. Others drop their pants and join his protest. Butters has won. But what next? His goal was to unite all the boys in South Park Elementary against the girls, and he's accomplished that. What is he going to do with his newfound power? At this point, I just have to give you the answer. I resisted doing this for 20 plus videos, but guys, it's time. I can't resist it anymore. I'm going to quote Oscar Wilde. There are two great tragedies in life. The first is not getting what you want. The second is getting it. This is a lesson that a lot of revolutionaries learn the hard way, and Butters is about to join their ranks. So what happens the day after a revolution? Well, first you flex your power, say a bunch of empty words, and finally sign a peace treaty with the enemy. You know, work together to build a better future and all that gay stuff. That's what the boys and girls do. They work together to bake danishes. They plan to sell the danishes and fund Denmark's efforts to catch the actual troll who started this whole gender war in the first place. The effort was doomed from the start. Matt and Trey foreshadow it very cleverly. First, it's with the danishes themselves. Danishes aren't Danish. They originate in Austria. The Danish themselves call it Wunderbrod. In English, that translates to Venice bread. The second wrinkle is that the troll obviously doesn't want to be caught. Led by Kyle's dad, they troll Denmark off the internet. When the kids try to sell their danishes, nobody wants to buy. That leaves only one logical solution. Tear up the peace treaty and go back to war.
I told you, fellas, this is what you get for working with a bunch of stupid girls.
The war suffers from the curse of the sequel. It's never quite as fun as the original. Instead of rallying the boys to stick it to the girls like before, Butters mostly has to deal with defectors and low morale among the surviving members.
And I just want you to know that I'm here for you.
Despite challenges like these, Butters does his best.
Fuck you, Stan! You're a traitor!
It's a weak protest. Butters once had the loyalty of every boy in school. Now he only has 4, and they're not even dropping their pants anymore. He has to do it alone. Butters ends up grounded and alone, pressing his wiener against the window for no one in particular. This is often the fate of a lot of protest movements. It's the tragedy Oscar Wilde spoke about. Movements always die out no matter what. If you don't get what you want, the movement dies. But if you get what you want, the movement still dies. This leaves a couple of questions. Why do movements lose steam? Why do people get tired of protesting and just choose to stay home? The answer as to why protest movements lose steam is obvious when you look at Butters' own movement. It comes down to timing and the tragedy of winning. Let's start with the timing. Butters launched his movement at the perfect moment. Girls were getting trolled online, so they dumped their boyfriends. The boys didn't do anything to deserve getting dumped, so they got angry. And that anger sent them straight to Butters. That is the power of anger. It's a strong emotion, but it fades quickly. Any movement founded on anger needs to constantly fuel that anger to keep itself going. But that is impossible. Sooner or later, that fuel is going to run out. And once that happens, the anger is going to decline and people will naturally lose interest. Butters' movement was even more fragile because it was based on a single incident. There weren't really any additional incidents to keep it going. The girls didn't fight back or aggravate the boys any further. They just let them yell until they got tired. This is the same thing that a lot of governments do with protesters. They let them march in the streets, wave some placards, and sing some songs. Sometimes governments can make certain concessions, and slowly, protester numbers thin away until there's nobody left. Even authoritarian governments have learned that shooting protesters only creates more protesters, so they let protesters let off the steam in a controlled manner until they get tired. This happened recently in Iran. A young woman died in the custody of the morality police after being arrested for apparently wearing her hijab incorrectly. People were reasonably angry. There were protests all over the country for weeks. The rest of us thought the mullahs would finally be overthrown, but that is not what happened. Over 500 people still died during these protests, but that is apparently a low number by Iranian standards. Mullahs seem to have learned something from the Arab Spring. They mostly let the protesters do their thing, and they even pardoned the protesters that their goons arrested. After a year, the protests naturally ran out of steam. The protesters kinda got some of what they wanted, but they didn't get everything. The morality police are not enforcing hijab rules as harshly as they were before, but the mullahs are still in power. The more sweeping goal of the regime change was never accomplished. The mullahs traded looser enforcements of religious laws in exchange for retaining their power, and now they're using Israel's war to strengthen that hold on power. The people can't be angry at both Israel and the mullahs at the same time. This kind of thing happens everywhere, and it has definitely happened in your country more than once. Protesters want 10 things, but they're able to get maybe 2. And it's usually never really important stuff. The powers that can make a couple of minor concessions and then distract everybody with something else. As long as they don't give protesters any more reasons to be angry, enough of them will lose interest for the movement to fade away slowly. Kinda like Butters, pressing pickles alone at the bedroom window while all his former supporters are distracted by other things. And even when the protesters win, they face a second problem. The tragedy of winning is what Oscar Wilde is referring to in his quote, "There are 2 tragedies in life. The first one is not getting what you want. The second one is getting it." Even when the protesters win, they still don't always get a happy ending. But why is this? We just have to look at Butters and his movement. He got angry and started a protest movement because a girl broke his heart. But he had no plans for the future. He had no idea what to do with the girls or even the boys after he technically won. So he just kept doing the same thing he was doing before, pressing pickles and aggravating girls. But this gets old, and everyone just gets tired of it. Butters' followers didn't care about pressing pickle. It was more just an outlet for their anger. What they really wanted was to get their girlfriends back. We see this most clearly with Stan.
Because I miss you, Wendy.
It's the same tragedy that has befallen pretty much every movement and revolution in history. Movements are always formed by people with very different goals. They unite temporarily, and once they have achieved the one goal they share, they start pursuing their own separate individual goals. These individual goals aren't always aligned, and it creates a lot of conflict. This conflict tends to destroy the movement itself, and even some of its achievements. Stan trying to get back together with his ex is a perfect example of this, and history is full of countless other examples. Once the French revolutionaries had guillotined the king and the nobility, they turned on each other. Until Napoleon came along, swept them all aside and proclaimed himself emperor. The irony was that Napoleon was far more powerful than the king they had just overthrown. And we don't even have to go that far back into history. We just need to go back to the Arab Spring. It was the first series of revolutions a lot of us watched on TV, I hope. People all over the Arab world rose up against their dictators. Some won, some lost. 14 years later, nothing has really changed for the better. The best case scenarios were in Egypt, Algeria, and Tunisia. People traded one set of tyrants for another set of tyrants. Life in those countries hadn't changed much since the revolutions. In the worst case scenario, we had Libya and Syria. The Syrians failed to remove Bashar al-Assad, and they have been stuck in a civil war since. The Libyans successfully removed Muammar Gaddafi from power, executed him, and displayed his body in the butcher shop. They have also been stuck in a civil war ever since because the revolutionaries couldn't agree on who should be put in charge. This is not some crazy exception, it's actually the rule. Pretty much every revolution in history has collapsed into tyranny, and even social movements tend to eat themselves. The hashtag #MeToo movement collapsed when we ran out of actual predators and started digging up unverifiable claims from 30 years ago. Anti-MeToo backlash has inspired the whole red pill movement. Today, gender relations are the worst they have ever been. And that is the fate of all protest movements and revolutions. Either they die or they die. If they're disorganized, the movement will just fade away as people lose interest over time. And if they are organized, 99% of the time, you're either gonna fight over who will be the main character of the movement, or one guy will eliminate everybody he views as a threat so that he can be the undisputed main character. And that is the message here. Be careful what you wish for. You might just get it. And if you start a movement one day, it will definitely die one day. So once you achieve your goals, please stop. Don't destroy all your accomplishments by pushing too far, too soon.